On the 1st of July, Europe will cease importing oil from Iran, and new U.S. sanctions will also come into place. Now, to talk about how this will affect the energy market, I'm now joined by Daniel Yergin. He is the chairman of IHS Tehran and also author of The Quest and Pulitzer Prize winner. Daniel, it's a big pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So, right now, what we're seeing on the energy market is a downward trend, although over the years of the economic turmoil, 2008, 2009, and the following years, we have seen oil prices pretty high. What do you make of the downward trend today?
Well, it's quite remarkable because just 3 months ago, oil was almost $130 a barrel, and people said it was going to go to $150, and now it's been on this downward trend that has, in a sense, taken people by surprise. And I think what it reflects is the reality of supply and demand in the market, how it's changed, and also what is really quite remarkable, a kind of relaxation almost, or a calm about these very powerful sanctions that go into place on Iranian oil, because I think right now the kind of sense in the market is that there's alternative supply that will replace the Iranian oil.
This embargo on imports from Iran is coming in at a very difficult time for Europe. We've got the European debt crisis, which is looming, and there's basically no light at the end of the tunnel so far. Do you think Europe is doing this at a very bad time? Is it shooting itself in the leg?
I would say there was much more worry about exactly that question, Dimitri, 3 months ago, when it was thought that the result of this could be to send prices up rather than down. And I think, frankly, I think the Iranians thought that that was going to happen. But there seems to be such a supply cushion that unless some other surprising things happen, there's enough oil out there in the market that's going to replace it, so that this won't necessarily be a penalty on Europe. And in fact, what lower oil prices mean both for Europe and the United States is like a big tax cut. It actually puts money into the pockets of consumers. And if anything, it's a stimulus to recovery.
Now, the fact that Europe is stopping buying oil from Iran, and China is has become a huge player on the energy market, one of the biggest consumers of energy. It's kind of bringing Iran and China together. Do you think Europe might lose Iran to China?
Well, I think one of the major themes in The Quest is about how China's gone from being an oil exporter not so many years ago to being the world's second largest oil importer, and not only the economic consequences of that, but the geopolitical consequences, which you're talking about. And I think in general what we're seeing is a situation where more and more the oil from the Middle East is going to flow east rather than west, because that's where the growth market is. And something else that's very striking that's happened that just did not seem conceivable 4 years ago is the growth of production in the Western Hemisphere. And that is a theme that is one of the dominant themes in The Quest, because it's this thing about unconventional oil. US oil production is up 25%, Canadian oil production is increasing, Brazil's increasing, and you start to see a world in which the Western Hemisphere in 5 or 10 years will be more trading among itself. And again, what you're describing, more of a shift towards the East for the Middle East.
Well, let's talk about these unconventional oil and gas technologies right now. Shale gas has also become one of these, shifting basically the shape of the energy market. But Russia's not on that.
Right. I mean, we're obviously the birth of shale gas, it took a couple decades to actually have it happen, but it probably is the biggest energy innovation since the beginning of this century. It's transformed the energy market in the United States, because the US was going to be a big importer of LNG. In fact, it was going to be importing LNG from not only from the Middle East, not only from Australia, but from Russia. And now it's self-sufficient, and now the debate in the United States is about being an LNG exporter. So big impact there. But I think Russia is often said to be the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, and has so much conventional gas that shale gas is not relevant to it in the same way that it is. And there are different political authorities have different attitudes towards shale gas. But the other unconventional that is really having a big impact is what's called tight oil. And that uses similar technologies. And the U.S., everybody always thought the U.S. production continued to go down, imports go up. The U.S. now is increased its oil production by 25%. And I noticed in Russia now there's a lot of discussion about tight oil, particularly going back to places like West Siberia, the established oil fields, and using these technologies, because for Russia, maintaining and increasing its oil production is also a national objective.
Well, oil and gas are obviously non-renewable resources, and for many years, many instances over the 20th century and 21st century, people have been saying that one day there will be a crisis of production, that the world will run out of resources. When do you think that could happen?
Well, this has been a very familiar question. In fact, in the 1880s, both in the United States and in the Russian Empire, people said in the 1880s that the era of oil is just about to come to an end, and of course we're still here. I think technology keeps opening doors, and now natural gas resources are so much larger than they looked to be 5 or 7 years ago. And there have been amazing new natural gas discoveries off of East Africa. So for oil, the questions are not only the resource underground, but what happens above ground, what kind of decisions that governments make. And obviously the big challenge is the emerging markets. What you spoke about before is China and meeting their demands. So it's a challenge, but it seems that the resources, physical resources, are there. But at the same time, we have to become much more efficient in how we use our energy, much more efficient.
On the energy market, let's talk about basically other aspects that we have. We have renewable energy, we have nuclear energy, which has also been changing, especially after Fukushima. Several countries have been saying they want to go away from nuclear energy. What is the future for nuclear energy?
Well, I think that, on nuclear, we should talk about nuclear and renewables. I think nuclear, the Fukushima accident, a tremendous tragedy. It's obviously Japan was headed towards being 50% nuclear. Now the question is it going to be 10% nuclear, 15% nuclear? So Japan has a real struggle about what it's going to do. And the reason it went nuclear is it doesn't have very many resources of its own. So now I think there's a big debate, really kind of a crisis of confidence about the energy future and about the whole system of governance. We've seen different changes, different world. Germany, after Fukushima, changed its mind, said we're going to shut down our nuclear. Russia continues to go ahead, nuclear continues to go ahead in the United States, it continues to go ahead in Finland. France is 70%, 75% nuclear. So I think it depends country to country. You have South Korea building new nuclear power plants in Abu Dhabi. So it's a very mixed picture, and not what people talked about 2 years ago when we talked about a nuclear renaissance. It's a mixed picture. Renewables is very interesting, and I had a lot of fun in the quest, really trying to understand the rise and fall and rebirth of renewables, and I talk about the rebirth of renewables because this was an industry with great enthusiasm in the 1970s and 1980s, but it was very young, very small, and technically immature. The renewable industry today is much more mature industry. Wind machines are much bigger, solar costs are coming down, but they're still more expensive, and they still haven't gotten to scale. So it's going to be a further evolution before I think that they really gain more market share, unless you're a country like Germany, which says we're a rich country, we're willing to really subsidize these resources. But I think they'll continue to grow and become part of the mix. But I think the big changes in the energy mix probably won't come until after 2030 because of the scale of conventional energy growth and the needs of countries like China and India.
Let's actually talk more about that. Let's just go hypothetical. Year 2030, what is the world going to look like? Where is it going to take energy?
Well, I think, first of all, we know there'll be a lot of surprises and things that people didn't see coming, that of course, and that's a given. But on basic numbers, it looks like the world energy demand will be about 35% more than it is today, about 35%. Renewables will grow a lot, but so will oil, natural gas, and coal. I think one big difference is that we're going to see natural gas gaining market share because there is so much gas, and we'll see it used more widely in electric generation and even to some degree in transportation.
All right, how will that be also affecting the change in pillars of power?
You know, the Middle East will still loom large because of the tremendous amount of resources, but we will see resources developed elsewhere. China, for instance, right now is putting a lot of effort into unconventional gas, into shale gas. So I think that kind of development will continue. Even Saudi Arabia is looking for shale gas now in order to use it in electric generation so they can free up more oil for export.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you, enjoyed it. Thank you.